So let's talk about the elephant in the room. As you can see, obviously I broke my wrist. And if I didn't have a rainy day fund, my family's finances would be greatly impacted by that. And that would mean no Disney shifts, no extra hours, no manual labor, none of that stuff. And as we can see, most families are one impact away from having their finances absolutely ruined. And today we're going to look into fixing that permanently. Hey, welcome back to the Buy Your Kids a House podcast. Again, I'm Matt, this is Andrew, and this is our chapter deep dive series. And in this, we're going to dive into the aspect of a rainy day fund because as you can see, again, I broke my wrist and I'm seeing that happen right now. And then also the elements of also eliminating high interest debt and also other debt that might not be nearly as impactful to your finances, how to balance it all and see out what actually matters.
Yeah, and we're literally watching this happen in real life time. And Matt broke his wrist and the impact that it's had on his family, and having that stability is super important.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive on in.
Let's do it.
So first off, we're going to go diving into the idea of emergency fund and what that actually means. And initially, the starter emergency fund should be at least $1,000 set aside. That $1,000 is quick cash that you can use for, like if you get a flat tire, your AC goes out, things that you need quick cash for. Now, as your savings and your investments and everything start to grow with that, you're going to want to grow that to about 2 to 3 months of your income set aside for a greater long-term, short-term disability, things along those lines, broken wrist, things that take you out a little bit longer. And I would say a safe amount for that is roughly around $10,000. If your expenses and everything exceed more, then absolutely you can adjust it based off of your needs. But I think starting off with 1,000 and then eventually building it to 10,000 are two great benchmarks, are nice round numbers that work out well, that should meet most of your needs for a immediate or slightly long-term situation that might impact your family.
No, exactly. And it's not a rainy day fund that's going to make you rich. It's one of those that's going to provide the stability. Because if you're trying to pull like from stocks or other investments that you have, that could take 3 to 4 days, at least, and those are business days. God forbid it happens on the weekend.
Yeah.
Then you're kind of just stuck if your AC goes out or something like that. So it's not looking at building a richness necessarily, but it's giving that ease of mind that if something were to happen, you had that fund immediately available.
Absolutely. Again, when you're having that time for you to sell a stock, transfer it to your own bank account, and then use it, a couple days and everything, especially over a weekend or a holiday, that's a long time in Florida, especially with the heat without AC and everything. So I definitely want to go through that element. And then again, building to that $10,000, the reason why you want to eventually build towards that is because even if you had the ability to sell some of your investments in stocks, if you only have like a Roth IRA or a 401k, if you're pulling from those things, there are going to be tax implications from that. Yeah. You're going to pay penalties or take out loans towards their 401k that you have to pay back with interest. So there are a lot of elements as to why we want to grow that to $10,000 so you don't have those other tax obligations or other financial impact for that rainy day. So I know some people are saying, like, why would I keep $10,000 just not having invested? Again, having that stability to know that it's ready to go if you need to for whatever happens. Because again, life does happen and it happens very fast.
Very quickly.
Yeah, so I think that kind of covers the rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Now we're going to kind of go into high interest debt and what that looks like. Because again, that's the next step of what we want to conquer and eliminate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let's look into it.
Yeah. So now that we kind of covered the rainy day fund, now we're going to go diving into the next thing you need to tackle, which is your high interest debt. Now, for a lot of times, that's people looking at their credit card bills as a primary source for that high interest debt. Now, there are some loan things out there. They're also in the high interest debt area, but primarily we're looking at credit cards, which are 22, even up to 30% for that. Yeah, and then again, no amount of investments you have will consistently beat that over long term. You might have your little spikes here and there. You're maybe one stock that all of a sudden just hits it hot and fast and everything. But over the long term of your investment and everything, you're looking at between 8 to 12%. So if you have anything that's in the teens or higher of a percent from your APR, that's what you want to tackle to help eliminate. Because again, if you're putting away, let's say you're putting $100 into your stocks instead of into your high interest debt. Yeah, you made 10 cents on there, but you lost 20 cents on what you're paying towards your high interest debt. You just lost 10 cents. So again, we want to eliminate that high interest debt first before we tackle into the investments.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of people get stuck because they think I should put this money directly into the investments because I have this extra money. It's going to be making me more money. But in reality, that's not always the truth. Like you were saying, if you have that higher interest, that money you're making is going to be paying off the interest and not even the principal of it. So you're not even paying anything down per se. So looking at what it is and where the money is best invested, whether it is paying off so you don't have that higher interest rate, or you're paying on that much more, instead of trying to be like, oh, you know what, I just invest this and that'll pay for that. And a lot of times it doesn't.
Yeah. So again, first step I would say is to still get that $1,000 rainy day fund. But after you get that, before you build it to the $10,000, we would start looking at eliminate that high interest debt in that area. Once you eliminate that, then we can start building towards that $10,000 rainy day fund and other investments and other platforms. But if it's definitely something that's in your teens or higher of an interest rate, that's what we want to tackle first. Now, if you are in a decent income and you're realizing like, hey, I'm making it for the mistakes in my youth. Like, I was in college and took out a bunch of credit card debt, but now I have a decently high paying job for the first time ever, and I have a decent amount of disposable income. Maybe doing a multi-pronged approach to get your Roth IRA at least a little bit contributing there, because the only caveat to this is you can only have certain yearly contribution limits for those Roth IRAs and 401ks and traditional IRAs. And once that time passes, you can't retroactively put back in there.
Yeah.
So again, if you are in that unique unicorn situation, like, hey, I'm fresh out of college, or I got my first truly big kid job and everything, and you're getting now a decent salary, and you realize I need to make up for the mistake of my younger days, but I have the ability to do multiple things, maybe still contributing to those Roth IRAs and everything, so that you can meet those income, those maximum yearly contributions and everything, might be a smart caveat in that area, but that's a rare thing. Yeah. Again, I still would say if you're a teens or higher interest rate, eliminating that first is probably what's good for probably 75-80% of the population to begin with. So.
Oh yeah, because it sneaks up on you. The interest rate, like you're like, oh, I paid $500. What'd you pay it to? Oh, that was $100 payment to your principal. And you're looking at that and you're going, I'm never gonna get out. I'm stuck. Then this is where discipline comes in as well.
No, it can definitely be a vicious cycle and everything with that. Like, again, a lot of times you don't realize, especially if you're making only minimum payments and everything, you don't realize, oh, my minimum payment only says I need to pay $50 a month.
Yeah.
Well, 45 of that is to interest, and you're only taking $5 off your principal.
Right.
Like, you're going to keep paying that 45 each month and everything. And that's just throwing money away. So again, doubling or tripling that monthly payment beyond the minimum, at least then all that extra goes towards that principal balance and everything. So definitely also, great point to bring up of, do your best not just to make the minimum payments. If you can, pay it off in full. And
right.
We'll cover that when we're talking about maximizing points and everything. But if you're at a point that you've already accumulated that credit card debt and you're just trying to get out of things, you definitely want to approach the idea of tackling it with definitely more than the minimums. Because if you're paying the minimums, it's going to take years and years to pay off. And you're going to spend a lot of money burning that off.
Yeah.
And then from there, like if you have multiple cards or multiple things that are all those higher interest rates, attack the one with the highest APR first, and then work your way down. So, if you've got one credit card at 28%, then another one at 25, another one at 22, go for that 28% first, because that's the one you're burning the most money at.
Well, exactly.
Attack that one first, and then if you pay that credit card off, here's a beautiful idea. Don't just take that money that you now were paying towards that, apply that to the next card. And a lot of times it's called debt snowballing.
I was about to say the snowballing effect, and it works really well to get things paid off quickly as well. Like once you hit that threshold of paying off that first higher interest rate, instead of being like, wow, hey, I got a lot of extra money. I don't have this payment now.
I got an extra $100 a month.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm good.
No, you really don't, because you want to keep up the work until that is completely alleviated.
Yeah, but then once all that debt is off your books, now that money you have, you can now apply towards that rainy day fund or investments and everything. So again, if you have a couple thousand or even tens of thousands of credit card debt and everything, if you're paying $400, $500, $600, $1,000 a month, that amount of money, once all that debt's done, you can then apply towards your investments.
No, exactly. So you're able to have more purpose with your money.
Yeah, and again, purpose without blowing it on interest rates, because as I used before, about $45 out of that 50 is going to interest. There are a few things that are as frustrating in your day as when you see that principal only just eat down little by little. Like, what do you mean? I just paid all this money. Why did it only eat like a little? It's painful.
But so like higher interest debts, definitely get them paid down. It's super important to look at that first. And like you said, it is also important to invest the maximum you can into like a Roth or your 401k, the yearly. But that is a yearly cap. So what happens after you meet that? Maybe you meet it early, maybe you meet it later. then you have a chance to look at your finances and see where you can put more into getting those interest rates pulled down.
Yeah. So definitely. Again, we're going to create systems and everything. We're going to show this in place of how this plays out and works and everything. But definitely, again, for the majority of people on here, I would say is stack your debt and look at your highest interest rate and work your way down, eliminating that as much as you can until you get below that teens of an interest rate.
Yep.
And then that's going to kind of lead us into the next section we're going to go into is what we do with the lower interest rate area. And I think that's what we're going to cover up next.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about low interest debt and how it's different. And this is where we differ from other financial experts because not all interest is evil.
Yeah. So again, the idea is this is where your main loans come from, whether it's your car payments, your mortgage payments, maybe even student loans, those that have lower interest rates. When I mean by lower interest rates, I mean below 10%. And that's where, again, as I mentioned in the previous section, if you have a 20% interest rate on a credit card, but you're only earning 10%, you're losing 10% if you're worried about your investments over burning off that debt. Whereas now we're in the reverse of that. Everything comes down to time value money, or the idea of opportunity cost for those who really gone into finance and maybe had their business degrees and everything. Everything you spend has an opportunity cost that you could be using on something else, another resource. So again, if you're paying off your mortgage early, or your car early, or your student loan debt early, there is an opportunity of you could have earned 10% potentially on your investments. Now, obviously, we can't predict the future. There might be stock market crashes, things along those lines. But on average, I think we can safe to say 8 to 12% is what you can earn over the long term with your investments. And if you are paying 6% on your debt for your car, well, you just lost 4 cents on every dollar if you're worried about paying off your car sooner versus maximizing that investments. Not even talk about, again, we're going to bring up again, is the idea of each year you only have so much you can invest into your Roth IRA and 401ks and things along those lines, because you can't go back and retroactively put into it. So
Right. No, you can't jump back in time. So it's important to keep up with that, especially prioritizing it to an extent of being able to hit that maximum, like you said, because as of now, as far as we know, there's no time machines out there. So until that's a thing,
hopefully
we got to keep up with it.
I'm all about Marty McFly and everything. Let's figure this out. Get that DeLorean up and going and everything.
That's right.
But I will say there is one caveat I will mention to this, and that is what a lot of times people don't realize when it comes to student loan debt is you got to be careful with deferments and everything. I know it can be enticing because a lot of them look at hey, I can defer or do income-based payment and everything. A lot of times those income-based or deferments still has the interest rate growing on that. I've seen people a lot of times think that they're paying towards their student loan debt. Like, oh, I've been paying this for the past 5 to 10 years. Why has my principal balance gone down? Well, you took an income-based payment plan. The income base is either at or below the interest rate of it. So it's actually increasing your balance and everything. And I'm sure we've all heard the story I left college with $40,000 in credit card debt, or student loan debt. Why all of a sudden is it $50,000?
Yeah.
That's unfortunately the trap that they put you in. So while yes, I'm not saying to pay that debt off sooner, you want to make sure you actually are still paying off the principal of that.
Right. So making sure what your payment is at least enough to get that principal paid down.
Yeah, like a normal amount like you would do on your car payment or mortgage payment when you're looking at that amortization sheet and seeing how much is going towards the principal and everything. You are wanting to make sure you are still working at that principal of your student loans, because again, a lot of them make it seem like they're working in your favor. But of course, they're doing that because they want to make more money too. And how can they make more money? Charging more interest rates.
Right, exactly. And like what we were talking about before, just not making that minimum payment, because that minimum payment is, like you were saying, you're maybe $4 or $5 off your principal, but the rest is going to the interest. So making that even $30 extra you're going to see a huge difference over time.
Absolutely. So again, making sure, and I'm not saying don't take deferments or don't take income based. If you financially need to or in that situation, I get it. But just keep in mind, if you're doing that there's going to be a cost with that. As we mentioned about opportunity costs, if you defer another year or two after you graduate college to make payments back because you don't have the income to do so, I get it. But you're going to have then another 8% added onto that principal balance. So that means in the long term, we're going to have to pay that down even more to get that balance paid off. Or if you have income based, make sure that it's at or at least slightly higher than the interest that you're getting, because you don't want to add more principal onto that balance over long term, because you're just digging yourself further into a hole in that.
No, exactly. And it feels like a losing battle. And that's where, the depression can set in. You feel stuck. You feel trapped. You don't have that freedom that you want. You think about going out to eat, just even like McDonald's. It's like, I go out to spend $5. Can I spend $5? And that's not a fun place to be in.
Yeah. And then, I'm going to give one other last little tip that people like to do for paying off, like especially the mortgage, because a lot of times when we're talking lower income debt, a lot of people are looking at their house mortgage and they're just looking at, I got 30 years to pay this thing off, or even now in the news, the 50-year plan that they're floating around. And I'm not saying to go that route, but a lot of times people will suggest going the 15-year mortgage because the idea is you're paying off in half the time, which sounds fantastic. And I agree, in theory, is fantastic. However, typically speaking, I still would look at potentially a 30-year mortgage. And then if I have the ability to, then attack faster. But if not, then you can still just do your basic payment on that. Whereas if you're in a 15-year mortgage, you're locked in that amount each month and everything with it. Now, with the mortgage, there is one little trick that a lot of people do, and I do it myself, is basically we pay bi-weekly. And how you do bi-weekly payments, because our lovely calendar system, I don't know why it's built this way, but we have 52 weeks in a year, which doesn't equal 4 weeks per month and everything. So you have a hidden extra month in there. So with that, if you're paying bi-weekly and you're breaking that up that way, you in essence get one whole extra payment towards your mortgage that goes just straight to principal, the whole amount of it and everything. And for the most part, when you're breaking it up that way, it still seems like an even amount of what you're used to, because most people are going to be either paid weekly or bi-weekly, so you know the same amount's coming out the way that that's going. So that would be one way I would look at if you are wanting to pay off that 30-year mortgage a little faster, doing the bi-weekly payments and everything. I think it's a way to still meet your other financial goals, but then still attack that 30-year mortgage and bring it down. Because a lot of times if you're doing that bi-weekly payment, you can turn that 30-year mortgage into a 20-year mortgage without even really realizing the impact that it has on your finances.
No, exactly. You get to the end of it and you're like, wait, how much do I have left? I don't have that much left?
Yeah, we made it.
All right.
So those little trips and ticks and everything might help out and everything if you really want to try to knock off the house, because obviously one step to being in your freedom number and being in the retirement and everything is having that mortgage especially off your books, because if you're looking at retirement and looking at what you need to spend and everything, not paying for a house is definitely a great way to make finance a little easier and everything. If you're saving that $2, $3, $4 a month of not having to pay towards that, that's a lot less income you have to produce to get through that.
No, exactly. And it helps loosen up that budget a little bit too.
Yeah. So I think that kind of covers the area of low interest debt. I think now we're going to go into, again, kind of rehash of the breakdown of the order that we're going to go into and how this looks like now as a whole system of looking at between your rainy day fund through your low interest and everything. So
all right, let's get into some statistics.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so now let's look at the order of operations as well. So we've talked about all these different things. Step one is definitely probably going to be do the rainy day fund, to have that liquid finances ready to go immediately, so you don't have that waiting period as well. Next is eliminating the high interest. Like we talked about, it's super important to get that high interest down because you're losing so much money from it. It can just be crazy.
Yeah.
And then invest early and max out those Roth IRAs and the 401ks as well. But let's talk about what we mean by maxing it out. We want to match whatever, like if you work for a company and they're like, okay, you invest this amount, we're going to match up to that amount. So you want to every year look at that and make sure that you're at least hitting that. Maybe not necessarily the full amount that you can invest per year, but whatever that matches, that way you get free money.
Yeah.
And then, a little bit lower, but the low interest, and that's something you can go more at your own pace. You don't necessarily have to be like, okay, my mind's spinning at night, I'm losing sleep because how am I paying off this low interest? Okay, let's take it back a little bit. That's not as important. It's still important, but it's not as important as figuring out some of these other things and lining them up to be able to put together and do.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're doing these steps and everything, you're going to see that massive financial impact, make things calmer, more stable, relaxing in that process of actually seeing your money go to work for you rather than panicking. Because like a lot of times we can see, you'll have all this debt, you'll have all these expenses, and you're just shotgunning your money around trying to be like, okay, I need to pay a little bit here, and you're trying to keep the plate spinning.
Whatever sticks.
Yeah. And instead of creating that systematic order of how to go through this process, and then as you go through that process, you're going to start seeing progress. Mm-hmm. And we start seeing that progress. Like that's one of the key things into realizing that I'm making it to the light at the end of the tunnel. Because a lot of times we get overwhelmed with this. When you're looking at it like, oh, I'm so far behind in debt. I'm behind on my mortgage payment. I have nothing in savings. I have no retirement accounts. You look at it like, how the heck am I going to get out of this?
Right.
When you put it in a systematic order and start chipping away, and you start realizing, oh, there is a method to this. There is progress in this. That's where we're going to start seeing the benefit from this. And again, going back to the 401k match, that's free money. A
Yeah.
lot of times, unfortunately, a lot of people just leave it on the table because they look at like, I don't have time for investments, or I'm already
Mhm.
have my Roth IRA, or whatever the case is. If they're doing a company match, which is getting rarer these days, but if they do a company
Mhm.
match, you're not going to beat free money.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times you'll hear like the terms, they match 50% of the 4%. What that means, if you take 4% of your salary and put it into that 401k, they match half of that, which is 2%. So that's 2%
2%.
of your annual salary of free money put in
Yeah.
there. I don't know any investment you're going to get that gets a 50% return right then and there.
Right.
And some do even 100% matches up to a certain amount. But
Mhm.
so we're not saying, I know you can do 17-ish thousand or whatever into your 401k each year. We're not saying to max out to that dollar amount. We're just saying match, get that match and whatever the company money's
Mhm.
doing. Which again, if it's usually about 4% of your annual salary, it's not as much of an impact or burden on your finances, but you're getting that match, which is bonus money on there. But
Yeah.
again, let's limit that interest, the high interest credit card debt first. But once we have, your 7,000 to your traditional Roth IRA, you have your company match. Now we can then look at that lower interest debt and start paying off that house early, maybe doing the biweekly payments,
Mhm.
things along those lines to help eliminate that down. But we already have now the system in place because again, we've eliminated the high
Yeah.
interest debt. We've maxed out our investments, at least the initial ones. Now you can also then invest beyond that if you want, but you at least have that foundation of your retirement accounts and everything set up along the way, and then now trying to eliminate that lower interest debt.
Not
So
exactly. And something that's helped me a lot because this financial journey didn't start when I was young. I wasn't brought up to think of things this way. It's in my early adult years that I was like looking at all my money, finally get a decently paying job and nothing to show for it. And I'm like, where's this all going?
yeah,
Something that helped me a lot, and I do recommend it, is creating a spreadsheet.
yeah,
Have something physical that you can see, have it written down so you can track it, and it stays more current in your mind. But also the reward of seeing it physically start going down. Like you were saying, the light at the end of the tunnel,
yeah.
to be able to see, like, oh, I am making progress. This isn't just a pipe dream. We can see the progress, you can see the freedom happening, and that just gives you more motivation to keep going.
No, I mean, a spreadsheet is definitely a great idea because it creates not only that tangible plan, but also you have more of a design to your plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, going back, if you're stacking your debt and you have it in order from highest interest to lowest interest, and let's just say you have $1,000 at a 25% APR, and that's your first credit card you're paying off at. Let's say you're taking $100 towards that principal every time. You have that on the spreadsheet. That's going to take you roughly 10 months to pay that off. We're talking about attacking the principal part.
Right.
But once you've paid off that principal, then you can have that spreadsheet rolling that $100 payment to the next one, and you can then calculate out how long this will take me then to pay the next one off.
Mm-hmm.
And you can actually see this will take me 1, 2, 3 years to get out of debt. Now that may seem like a long time, and I'm not saying it's not a long time, but at least you see a tangible light at the end of the tunnel, and if I keep on this track, there's going to be a reward, and that reward is being debt free.
Right.
And then on the same side, with then you set up your investments, you can then track your investments on there and see your investments increase and grow. Because as you've paid off your debt, you then can increase your contributions to your retirement investments, and you'll see then that payment increase and everything as well.
Yeah, and just seeing that increase and decrease, the decrease of what you owe and the increase of what's coming in is a great feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, that's a great idea, having that spreadsheet you can see and update it. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, a
absolutely.
lot of times people create these and then they save it in their MacBook and then they
And
throw it to the
just
side and never
forget
go back.
about it.
No, you want to revisit it, readjust it, and
Mm-hmm.
everything. I'm not saying do it every day, but like at least once a month, go in
Yeah.
there and actually, did I meet my goals this month? Maybe did I fall behind this month? Maybe I need to look at this month how I can pick it up a little bit more. Because again, we set these plans out, but plans don't always execute the way we want them to. But if we don't have a plan, you definitely plan to fail.
Exactly. And then there's like nothing to do. And then that's, when everything just becomes so overwhelming, you're drowning.
Yeah. And again, you can have that opportunity to catch up because let's say you wanted to pay $100 on this credit card, but this month you didn't make as much and everything. So maybe next month you can pay $150 towards it to help get back on track and everything.
Right.
So you can adjust the plan as you're going through it. But if you don't have a plan, you can't adjust it.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think that kind of covers the orders of how we attack this and create that streamline to then create that ease of mind, the passion, the calmness of getting through and reaching financial freedom in this. So
yeah, and that's the goal.
Yeah,
the goal is just to be completely free and be able to do the things you want to do within reason.
Yeah. So
all right.
So again, a broken wrist definitely shouldn't break your budget, and with the right plan, it won't.
No, and thank you for watching. We are on this journey together. We're really wanting to build this community up because financial freedom is such a huge thing that a lot of people don't even get to experience in their entire lifetime. So if you have succeeded over this and you did have financial debt and you're out of it or you're still struggling through it, we really want to just bring it together. And that's really what this is about. And helping us out as well, being able to put out more places, liking, sharing, commenting. If you already have spreadsheets made and you know something like templates and other people maybe are struggling to even like think about googling this, you know, because sometimes even that can be
Yeah.
overwhelming. Just drop it in the comments, you know, let other people share in what you have succeeded in, and we want to really just keep going and building this up.
Yeah, so definitely looking forward to this journey and everything, and definitely join us now for our next episode. We're going to dive in to fixing the future with the looking at the healthcare system, which I know as we're talking about debt, a lot of time medical debt can be a big part of that. So again, we're going to dive into that and join us for the next episode and join us on this journey. And again, like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, have a good
All
one.
right.